This show is about your mental health. While it's supported by the pillars of positivity and hope, if you find yourself in crisis, please reach out for help. In many communities in both the United States and Canada, you can dial 211 to be connected to mental health and crisis services in your region. While it may seem like it at times, you are not alone. I'm Kevin Frankish. Welcome. A lot has been said, and rightly so, about heroes of the pandemic: the doctors, the nurses, paramedics, firefighters, police. But not a lot is said about the other heroes, those who keep our economy rolling, the workers, the employees. Well, they are feeling the effects of the pandemic and the lockdown and the isolation through their mental health. It is deteriorating to a point we have not seen ever. Morneau Shepell is an HR services company, one of the largest of its kind in the world. They do a monthly mental health index. Nigel Branker is the president of Health Productivity Solutions at Morneau Shepell and talks to me about the state the workers are in. Your job, your mental health, right now on The Happy Molecule. Hello, Nigel.
Hi, Kevin. Great to see you again.
Good to see you again. So, Morneau Shepell, essentially, they provide HR services.
That's correct. We provide technology-enabled HR services globally.
So you're perfectly situated then to sort of get an overview of what the mental health is of the average Canadian worker.
Absolutely. We're the leading provider of mental health and well-being services in Canada. And in fact, last year we launched a mental health index in Canada, the US, Australia, and the UK.
Every month you do a mental health index. You're about to release your latest numbers. So we might get a sneak peek at that, but let's talk about where we are, how we arrived here. Essentially, what is the mood of a Canadian employee? And how does it compare? Because you do this worldwide. How does it compare with other nations?
Perfect. So the mood of the Canadian employee, I would say in the last 12 months since COVID, and maybe to back up on the index itself, we've released the results in the last 12 months, really to give voice to what people are experiencing. But we've been tracking data for over 3 years, so going back to 2017. So in Canada, 80% of employees, 80% of people have experienced a deterioration in their mental health and well-being. If we categorize looking at the highest risk category before the pandemic, we would have said maybe 1 in 7 employees were in our highest risk category. And today we would say it's more like 1 in 3. So a lot more people are in the highest risk category and seeing a deterioration in their mental health and well-being. In terms of comparing to, we do this study in 4 countries, as I mentioned, so Canada, the US, the UK, and Australia. A lot of the themes are the same. Canada's slightly higher in terms of the deterioration. In Australia, for example, we might see 75% of people have seen a deterioration. Canadians are more concerned about their colleagues and each other. About 4 in 10 Canadians are worried about their colleagues struggling with mental health. In other jurisdictions, it may be closer to 3 in 10. But a number of the trends are exactly the same. So the people that are struggling more are people in isolation, anyone who's seen their earnings go down or their hours reduced, families with young children, frontline healthcare workers. Those are the same across jurisdictions.
We should do kind of maybe a bit of a sales job for HR departments, because quite often they are considered, here comes HR, but they are responsible for the mental health and well-being of workers.
Absolutely. And to be fair to a lot of our clients in HR, if you look back on 2020, so what we've said and what our data says is that people are really struggling from burnout, higher incidences in our EAP of reporting suicidal ideation, for example. So all of this has happened in 2020. However, to be fair to most businesses in HR, 2020 was about focusing on the physical safety of your people, changing your business model. Like there was a lot that happened last year, and while we were dealing with all of this, quietly, people were just being bombarded with a number of stressors, right? So in addition to the normal life stressors of relationship and work, and it's the anniversary of my sibling's death, on top of that, we added a ton of stressors. We added working remotely, elder care, isolation, not knowing about COVID, not knowing when you're going to go back to work. The human brain doesn't like change. So we added all those stressors. And finally, as a bonus, we took away good coping mechanisms. So you're not going to the gym, you're not meeting with your friends, you're not going on a vacation. And that combination of more stressors plus less support is really what's leading to more people struggling or coping in bad ways, such as drug and substance abuse or domestic violence. So I couldn't agree with you more. I think HR has a critical role to play in working with their organizations and working to provide support to people at a time where they've never needed it more.
I'm going to put the index on pause for just a moment because something came to my mind in what you were saying, and that is not knowing when you're going to go back to work. What do you think? And I don't know if you can tell from the index, how ready are we to go back to work? And do you think there's going to be any other challenges that are going to be presented by us? It's similar to a prisoner being released. Are they ready psychologically to be released? Are we ready psychologically to go back to the office?
Yeah, that's a complex question, but I'd love to unpack it. So what I would say is, I think we can see, light at the end of the horizon in terms of getting back to work. It might be 6 months with a vaccine, et cetera. So that's positive. It would be a restoration of some, previous normalcy. But in terms of readiness, here's what I would say, and I do think this is the, the tip of the iceberg. The strain that we've been under for the last 10 plus months has taken a toll. And what we've learned from other traumatic events is when there's that type of sustained toll, it doesn't turn around automatically. So, if I'm an employer, if I'm an HR, I think what I would worry about is when we return to work, I probably have a workforce that is, running on a quarter tank, to use a gas tank analogy. So yeah, I think, and we see it now. I think people are. So I think people are struggling, and I wouldn't say a return to office or return to work will make this go away. I think we're in for a long haul, and a number of professionals in this space will talk about, sort of a second pandemic around mental health.
Okay, let's get back to the index. So since March of last year, I think maybe we can peg that as the real starting point when we had March break and we started to really see shutdowns and lockdowns and isolations. What is the index telling us about deterioration in mental health? Have we seen it dwindle, or did we see it sort of go down and then plateau?
Yeah, it went down quite a bit initially. Then it started to improve, and since then it's continued to deteriorate. So and you can understand that if you think about when we first started, last March in COVID, we didn't know what to expect. We were probably all overwhelmed, and then individual heroic sort of kicks in, and you said, "I got this. Okay, no problem. I can adapt." And we were feeling good, and then it really set in that we're nowhere close to returning to normal, and that's what the index has borne out as well. It's also validated some interesting insights that we all talk about. When I talk about having stressors, certainly financial stress is a big one. So we see almost a 20-point difference in the deterioration for people who don't have a savings account or who didn't have 3 months of savings. It just means that it's another stress at a time when you're worried about reduced hours or less hours or reduced income. So that was an interesting statistic on just the linkage between sort of financial well-being and overall mental health, for example.
Now here we are. We're midway through February. We've gone through the January blues. February is not usually much better, sadly. What can we expect, do you think, with the upcoming release of the latest report for January? What can we expect?
Yeah, I think in the latest report for January, I think you can expect a continued deterioration on the index. It did stabilize a little, it didn't plateau, but it did stabilize a little bit around December with people off for the holidays. And to your point, when we see the January numbers, I think we're starting to see just an acceleration of deterioration. So I don't think it's getting better anytime soon in terms of the average Canadian's mental health and well-being.
When you say the deterioration continues, is it going down fast? Is it going down gradually? I mean, how would you describe this decline?
I would say it's going down gradually, but that's gradually after a relatively significant decline. So, as I talked about, compared to the start of the pandemic, we would have said 13% were in the highest risk category, and now 35% are in the highest risk category. So I expect that to go from 35 to 40. So relatively, it's still a decline, not as precipitous as the initial decline, but still concerning.
Is there anything positive in the reports? Is there anything that shows a little bit of promise? Do you think?
Well, I think the reports that the data differs by sector, by demographic. Some groups are doing well, so or doing better, and I think the sense of community and the concern about each other's well-being really comes through. The other part is, when we talk about mental health, one of the biggest barriers is stigma, and this sustained period where more than 1 in 3 people are in the highest risk category is actually serving to remove a bit of stigma and making it safer for people to reach out for help and access the help and support that's available.
And there is help available.
Absolutely. I think if one theme out of 2020 was the deterioration in mental health and well-being, I'd say a secondary theme and the more hopeful was the rapid innovation and adoption of digital tools, of different types of support. Some of our partners, like the government of Ontario, the government of Manitoba, really stepping up Shoppers Drug Mart to promote and provide even more supports available. So I think that is a silver lining, that it's really forced us all to take a long, hard look at mental health and really evolve how we help people and meet them where they are.
And there are many, many different programs that are being offered digitally. Here's what I'm going to do for you, Nigel. I'm going to give you a free commercial time here right now. Who knows? I may send you a bill later. But let's talk about Morneau Shepell's mental health digital offering.
Great. Well, I appreciate the commercial. So our product, our solution is called Ability CBT. It's a form of digital cognitive behavioral therapy. And it is therapist assisted. So what that means is, if you went to myicbt.com, you would click on the link, you'd fill out a short questionnaire, and the purpose of the questionnaire is just to ensure that this is the right solution for you. If it's not, and you're at risk of harming yourself or others, we're the largest provider of mental health and well-being services. We have 24/7 crisis support. Someone will contact you to provide support immediately. But assuming the program is appropriate for you, then we connect you with a therapist, and you start to kind of work on the recovery journey in bite-sized pieces. So, mental health, I think about it a lot like something like retirement, saving for retirement. If you said, hey, build a retirement plan, it can feel overwhelming. If you say save $25 a month, okay, that's a little more manageable. And that's the approach we take with our program, to focus on self-care, understanding your symptoms, things that you can do at night on your own, work on your breathing exercises with a coach, a therapist there every step of the way to help you. You can connect with the therapist as much or as little as you'd like.
Okay, so, and I'll repeat this a little later on in the show, and I'll put it on my blog as well. So it's myicbt.com. So MY, the letter I, CBT.com, myicbt.com. Now, you're not the only one that offers this. So there are many companies and groups that are offering digital therapy as well. So reaching out is important, and removing that stigma. So it's important to know that when you reach out, you're not you're not saying you're weird or abnormal or crazy. You're just saying you need a bit of support, a bit of help.
That's correct, Kevin. If you look at our solution in 2019, we helped 1,000 people. In 2020, we helped 30,000 people.
Oh, wow.
And this year, we'll probably come close to helping 100,000 Canadians. And so,
Wow.
what we've learned, to your point on that, is what resonates for people to feel safe getting help. And we won't use mental health, for example, or therapy, but we will say you deserve to feel better. And if you're not feeling yourself, help is available. So, I think we've made progress on stigma, but I still think there's a lot of stigma, and often the worst type of stigma is self-stigma, right? You think that there's something wrong with
Yeah.
you, that you need help, and it's not the guy. And as the statistics point out, you're actually in the majority if you're not doing well or not feeling yourself.
What advice are you giving the companies that you're serving for watching out for mental health?
So I'd say we're giving a couple bits of advice, certainly in terms of the types of support that's available, and promoting accessibility and removing costs and barriers, but also looking at your people leaders, looking at your managers, training them to write. You don't need to train them to be therapists, obviously, or counselors, but as a leader, you can see if someone's starting to be different, starting to behave different, starting to withdraw, starting to miss work. And I think it's okay to just say, hey, is there anything I can help with? Remind them of the tools that are available. Like, just recognizing that there's a human being that is there to support them goes a long way. So those are some of the things we would do. We would help train managers. We would offer our solutions. We would help organizations promote their existing supports, for example.
It's interesting as well because you had said to me that companies that already took mental health, I don't want to say seriously, but already put a priority on mental health prior to COVID, were in a much better position to pivot and respond. So we're learning more about the need for mental health. So perhaps in the long run, this is going to be good for HR and companies and to realize just how important good mental health is.
Absolutely, and I think we will look back, and I'm hopeful, like you, that it forces a lot of organizations to rethink support, and to rethink, meeting their people where they are. Mental health is not one size fits all. Different people react differently, whether it's to group coaching or group support, whether it's digital, whether it's doing things on my own time, whether it's their willingness to reach out for help. I mean, this is a complex question. So I think if this sparks a bit of an evolution in terms of meeting employees where they are, not recognizing it's not one size fits all, offering a variety of supports, removing barriers. I think we'll look back and positively on that.
I've got to think though that it's more than just the employees; it's the managers and especially the small business owners and executives. I mean, yes, we can say, oh well, who cares about them? But you know what? They're human beings as well. They go through their own mental health issues as well. Have you seen any indication about those in the upper echelons uh, having unique mental health problems?
Yeah, I think certainly people in leadership positions, people leaders, managers, business owners are in a high risk category, because, and on top of everything they're dealing with as an individual, they tend to feel the responsibility of the people that report to them or that they're responsible for. So that adds to the stress as well. And even beyond that, I would say, and there's key roles. I mean, frontline healthcare workers, for example, teachers. What if? And also, I think the other thing that has really come through is, we talk a lot about the individual. Individuals have relationships and they're part of communities. So even if I'm doing okay, but my partner is struggling, that has an impact on you as well. So, I think what's really bubbled to the surface is the complexity. But as I said, I think the hopeful news is that it's also forced us to really innovate how we support people and how we reach them and remove barriers.
Yeah, and it must be especially tough for workers who have been furloughed or laid off, because there's probably some anger mixed in with there as well. So it's a double whammy for a company or HR to deal with.
I think that's true. I think you go through, and again, mental health is a little different for everyone, but certainly if you've seen a reduction in income or a reduction in hours, that has a significant impact. It's another trigger or that you have to deal with. So we do see a much more significant decline in the mental health and well-being of employees who've been furloughed, et cetera.
Okay, so the latest mental health index, the monthly index, won't be released for a couple of days now.
Correct.
But you've seen it. What can you tell?
I've seen a sneak peek.
What can you reveal that we might be looking at?
I would say this. I think we're approaching 12 months of data since the pandemic, and we talked a little bit about the pattern. What I would say that we see in the data now, and there's always slight changes in certain metrics or subcategories around depression or isolation, for example. But the overarching theme, I would say, is that we're not out of the woods, and this is here for the foreseeable future.
And that means, of course, that these programs are going to have to morph and adapt as time goes on.
Correct. I think we're going to have to continue to evolve on how we help people. Hey, listen, I think a lot of constructs are based on the idea where most people are doing okay, and there's a lot of onus put on the individual to say, hey, the tool's available, reach out and use it. And I think what we've learned is that the mindset of someone who is not 100% is different, and the slightest barrier can deter them from reaching out for help. So whether that's a cost barrier, whether that's a stigma barrier, whether that's an accessibility and having to wait too long. I mean, those are the things we think about all the time, right? When someone connects with a therapist, let's get them an appointment right away. Let's give them some materials right away. Let's start to help them take control. So I think those are the the silver lining of the evolution we're seeing in the types of solutions and services that are available to support people.
All right. Well, it'll be interesting to watch the index coming out in a couple of days, and then let's see what happens in February and March, and hopefully we'll start seeing better numbers come April, May, June into July, keeping our fingers
hopefully
crossed.
into the summer, and as we've made progress on vaccine distributions, and a lot of what drives this is just uncertainty. So the more the certainty and the more we start to see plans around when we're returning to office, when lockdown is being lifted, or in other provinces when a curfew is being lifted, I think that'll help as well.
And hopefully as well, the warmer temperatures, which are somewhere ahead, will help lift some spirits as well.
Absolutely.
All right. Nigel Branker, thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Always a pleasure.
So once again, that website is myicbt.com. That's myicbt.com. They're not the only ones that offer a mental health program digitally. There are many others. So please reach out for help. Don't carry this burden on your own. You're worth it. Take care of yourself and take care of each other.
Please consider subscribing to this podcast and also check out the Happy Molecule Extra at thehappymolecule.com. There you'll find a link to a video version of this episode, be able to join the conversation about mental health, learn about our Facebook Live show, and get a preview of upcoming episodes. You can email us at thehappymolecule@gmail.com. I'm Erin Davis, wishing you good mental health.